The gladiator James Allison himself gives huge solutions as to why the W15 will be a much better car under much better management, and what they're doing to actually improve the car and the team as a whole. Mercedes took a big step down from 22 to 23, while from 21 to 22 it wasn't a big step, and I mean that in a negative way. They had a chance coming into 23 to fight again, but they just brought back James Allison and he has a lot of things to say. Make sure you like and subscribe on the video. It would mean the world for me, especially if you're new here. If not, I'm thankful you came to watch. Let's get into the bigger parts of the video. From a podcast that has just now recently came out, he has stated a lot about the warnings for Mercedes, but also solutions to come.
The role I can play is much less technical and much more human than people might guess.
Now the team has been bad in multiple areas, not even just upgrading the car. Well, they did have in the 2023 season 29 upgrades, which was second best. But when you look at this list from 29 to 12, with the exception of AlphaTauri, it's a pretty low amount of performance upgrades. 23 was not a good upgrade season because a lot of teams switched their concept. Aston Martin found problems, McLaren switched their concept as a whole, so in the middle of the season they only brought those upgrades. Ferrari brought like nothing. Haas, we already know the story with them. Red Bull had the penalty, which wasn't really a penalty, but that stopped them from bringing upgrades. Expect more around that AlphaTauri number in 24 because teams will be going with the concept, sticking with it, and continuing off of it, especially Mercedes. Mercedes brought things to actually improve the Frankenstein car, but nothing really as a package that would take them to that next level because they knew the car was kind of at a standstill and all this was to prep for the 24 season. With those problems, it wasn't just upgrades. The team as a whole in pit stops, if you look at average 2023 pit stop times, now this was taken somewhere around September, so yes, we're missing November and October's numbers, but let's be honest, it didn't change that much. Las Vegas wasn't very fast. Qatar wasn't very fast there either with the pit stops. Russell had a 5.83 on the pit stops, Hamilton 3.27. Now, 3.27 isn't bad, but in October we do know that in Coda he had a terrible pit stop and that actually really messed him up for the race. Regardless of that, the strategy and the pit stops has been off. The team as a unison has not been working well together. And James Allison points that out. He says and highlights how there's been internal fragmentation with the team, saying we fragmented more than we should have done. He's specifically talking about from 22 to 23.
In the role of technical director is whether or not we can find it within ourselves to work in a way that allows all the technical skill that I just talked about to be harnessed effectively.
He says the team, because they weren't in the right mindset of when they were winning championships, they took a step down and blame was being put everywhere. We do know that in the beginning of the year, there was a problem with the wind tunnel where the actual engineers had a coding malfunction and the actual wind tunnel to track data was not correlated correctly. Those actual engineers ended up getting fired throughout the year and they ended up fixing that problem. But that set them back even further than they wanted to. Their goals that they wanted to actually achieve in 23 were met. Believe it or not, they were 8/10 off in Bahrain. I think they finished somewhere around the same thing in Abu Dhabi, but that just isn't acceptable because it is Mercedes. It's not Williams. It's a team that needs to be stepping it up year by year. He also points out that the data is against them. You know, really how far can they make it in 24 rather than 23? Big step ups have been achieved. Look at McLaren. In the middle of the year, they made a step up like that. Imagine what you can do in the winter with a lot more time. They do say, and even James Allison points out, from December to April, that is the prime time for you to actually step it on the car. Now, there is a mandatory break from the 24th of December to January 2nd, but that is to give the teams a little bit of time of vacation and not really focus in on the car on dates like Christmas and New Year's. Other than that, though, the team is on full gas, stepping it in, upgrading the car as much as possible, and getting that W15 into that new level. And as I said with the stats, you can even see with a little bit of data being put into it, what is kind of the predicted gap between teams in quali going into 2024. I thought this was a fun thing to throw out there, but this doesn't necessarily mean anything representative. Aston Martin, I feel like will be a lot closer. I do feel like McLaren, Mercedes, and all Ferrari will be a lot closer, especially in the quali. Now in race, you know how it is with Red Bull, so we'll have to see where teams are stepping up there, but I do think it will be a much more improved gap. I think it will be way better than we see on this scale. I mean, looking at even Haas being 6th, I doubt that will happen. I think a lot of teams are going to jump Haas in 2024, putting them at 10th. But Mercedes is on a good scale from even predictions, but also what is being talked about from James Allison. Because of the more upgrades and going with this whole entire new concept, I talked about it in the past video, everything that is being brought to this car that we should be expecting. But with the team's most destructive pattern from 22 to 23, James Allison is now working on a lot of solutions towards this. The solutions that he's putting and what he's doing to actually get the car to the level is pretty simple, but makes a lot of sense. He's putting the team together. He's pointing out that the senior engineers, the ones that were working on the cars, obviously he was kind of in and out for this, so he wasn't really overseeing it as much as Mike Elliott was in the time. He's talking about that the confidence in the team has just been down in the engine room from the aero department. Everybody is kind of looking for somebody to blame since 2021, especially since the Abu Dhabi incident. Everybody's looking somewhere to blame, scattered progress all over the place, and with that, he's highlighting we need to work now as a team in unison, not a blame culture, which is a big thing that Ferrari always likes to talk about, and Mercedes also likes to mention it, but if there's that internal team conflict, can you really step it up with the team? Putting the team and engineers together gives you a better working relationship. The better working relationship is what Mercedes needs. As I talked about, the pit stops, they're down. The strategy, they're down. They're losing members to other teams. Aston Martin being a notable one, poaching members from the Mercedes squad. Even Red Bull took plenty of Mercedes members during the years that Mercedes was dominating. So they are a missing squad. They have to put now some new members together. And all this does is help other teams and take away from Mercedes. That is why we see a step down from its domination. But is there a chance that in 2024 they really do catch Red Bull? It's possible. The biggest thing I like to mention is from 2020 to 21. Now there is a little quirk in this when I mention this, but Red Bull actually fought Mercedes in 21, when 2020 was the most dominant Mercedes car that we have ever seen. Not talking about 2014 with the engine, I'm talking about pure aero. That car was ridiculous because of the control and the balance in the car and the whole entire system they had implemented at that time, that crazy innovation, the DOS system, that was only usable for that year. Now what they did was they took away the low rake. They made the low rake kind of not as good as the high rake like the Red Bull setup. It hurt Aston Martin and Mercedes, so that's how they were able to step up. So nothing is really being put for Red Bull. Are there possibilities? Yes, but as I said, the data is against them. There's chances, but it's looking a lot brighter for the Mercedes squad, so expect a big jump, but do not be too ambitious on what could happen here. Thank you all so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, it would mean the world, and peace.